The Ascension of Arcturus, Part 2. December 23, 2015. Mitre continues. The first ones to awaken. When the Arcturians who had become lost in form began to remember their roots, they wanted to rejoin with their Arcturian family. Unfortunately, this rejoining would not be as simple as they desired. Much had occurred in their consciousness since they had forgotten who they were. For hundreds of thousands of turns of their planet, they believed they were separate. Within that belief in separation, grievous actions were committed, and the awakening ones had also created injury to the others and to the planet. To fully awaken, the awakening ones would have to heal the injury they had caused. Perhaps then they could reunite with their family who had remained in a formless state. First, the awakening ones would have to forgive themselves for doing harm to others. Then they would have to forgive themselves for falling into such a low state of consciousness that they believed they were separate from their Arcturian family. Believing that they were separate from their family had caused a deep loneliness, which had festered into fear. This fear gave them permission to do harm to others. Only the healing force of love could heal the scars that their fear had created. But, where would they begin? What and/or who were they supposed to love? They were stumped by this question for a long time before they realized that any permanent solution must begin at the source of the problem. However, what was that source? Oh yes, judgment is where it all began. Since judgment had begun this cycle of fear, hurt, more fear, only the opposite of judgment could complete this cycle. But, what was the opposite of judgment? They pondered this question for more cycles of the illusion of time. Finally, after many attempts to find the opposite of judgment, they found the answer. Forgiveness would heal judgment. In fact, to truly clear all judgment, forgiveness must be unconditional. They also remembered that the ones they had to forgive were not just the ones they had judged, but also themselves, the ones who had made the judgments. However, they did not know how to forgive themselves. They believed that first they would need to be forgiven by a being higher and grander than them. Since they held that belief, they made this true. They believed this higher being was the collective of the formless Arcturians. The important part of this belief was that it encouraged them to communicate with their formless Arcturian family. But, how would they communicate with a being that they could not perceive? Perhaps they could open a kind of portal through which they could transmit their need for assistance. They were surprised by the word portal, as it seemed to arise from a deep inner memory. But, fortunately, they also remembered that a portal is a multidimensional tunnel through which they could connect with increasingly higher octaves of their reality. The merging of the portal openers. The awakened ones were persistent and very determined. Hence, they became the portal openers, and portals into the higher dimensions began to open. When the portal openers sent their consciousness through the higher dimensional portals, they became aware of their own multidimensional nature. In this manner, the awakened ones commenced their journey back to their multidimensional self. As the portal openers connected with higher and higher frequencies of their expression of self, they developed a deeper and deeper connection with their formless family of light. They eventually came to understand that their formless family was indeed their self at a higher frequency of reality. With this new awareness about the nature of their true self, they could more readily accept unconditional love, which had always been flowing from the formless ones. Since unconditional love carries the gift of personal and planetary transmutation, the formless ones became known as the transmuters. The first, and most obvious, advantage of the acceptance of unconditional love was that it allowed the portal openers to love all of life, free of any judgment. Another important consequence of accepting the unconditional love was that it transmuted the portal openers' judgment into forgiveness. Because the portal openers accepted this unconditional love and allowed it to transmute their judgment into forgiveness, their myriad fears were transmuted into love. The return of the feel of love urged the portal openers to deeply believe in their self. Hence, the portal openers found the courage to open more and more portals into the unknown. As they opened these portals, they increasingly cleared fear from themselves and from their planet. Thus, As they healed themselves, they healed their Arcturian family who was holding the form of the planet. As fear was cleared from their consciousness, they no longer reacted to the fear of others or the judgment that arose from that fear. Also, as the fear was cleared from the awakened Arcturians, they could begin to heal the many wounds that had been created by the fearful Arcturians. Knowing that the creators of fear were driven by fear, allowed the portal openers to unconditionally love those who were still lost in their judgment of others. With the release of all judgment for the lost ones, the portal openers began to unite with each other in a very intimate manner. In fact, the portal openers were moving into a state of unity consciousness with each other, which felt vaguely familiar. Gradually they began to remember that once they were all one. This memory planted the first seed of unity consciousness with the planet itself. The expansion of unity consciousness. Unity consciousness with the planet included unity with the Arcturians who were holding the form of the planet. Unity with the planet had to occur because the Arcturians were the planet. Just as some Arcturians, actually pre-Arcturians, had chosen to be humanoids, others had chosen to be the planet. In fact, these Arcturians who had chosen to be the planet had taken on a denser matter than they had ever known. Thus, they too were lost in form. If the portal openers were to have unity consciousness with their planet, they would have to be in unity consciousness with all humanoids. In other words, they would need to include the lost ones in their unity consciousness. In this manner, the portal openers would know that they had totally released their judgment. Meanwhile, there were still many humanoids lost in their own judgment. Therefore, they lived in the fear and separation that judgment created. However, they did not want to change. They had experienced power over the others, and enjoyed that sensation. It had been so long since they had experienced unity that they believed only in separation. Hence, they continued to create separation by desiring the sensation of power over others that they judged as inferior to them. On the other hand, the portal openers were finding many portals into the planet, but they did not know how to open them. They imagined they would be opened in the same manner as the higher dimensional portals were opened. However, they did not really understand how they had opened the higher dimensional portals. They suspected that it had something to do with accepting the unconditional love sent to them by the formless ones, now known as the transmuters. Since the portal openers had established a line of communication with the transmuters, they asked them how the higher dimensional portals had been so easily opened. The transmuters replied, "Our dear portal openers. The higher dimensional portals open so easily because we are one being. We are you in the form of a humanoid, and you are us in a formless state of multidimensional light and unconditional love." This answer was all they could receive. Some of the portal openers were so confused by this answer that they did not give it any thought. However, other portal openers allowed this answer to live in their heart, where they did not need to think about it, but they could always feel it. The Arcturians who were the holders of the form of the planet had largely lost all unity consciousness with their Arcturian family, who lived in a formless state in the higher frequencies around the planet. Fortunately, some formless ones had taken residence in the deepest core of the planet. These formless ones could feel the portal openers' desire to open the planetary portals, but living in the planetary core had made them forget how to send unconditional love. Perhaps they too could accept the unconditional love from the transmuters. When they accepted that unconditional love, they found they could open the planetary portals from the core. Then, these formless ones returned to unity consciousness with the transmuters, as well as with the portal openers. A problem with the lost ones. At the same time, the lost ones who had not become portal openers still believed in separation and judgment. Fortunately, the flow of unconditional love that the portal openers had accepted was so strong that the lost ones could vaguely feel it, but wondered if they were good enough to receive it. This judgment of themselves and of unconditional love created fear. Then their fear created even more judgment, which created more separation. In response to their growing fear, the lost ones who believed in separation created a separate God. They could not believe in unconditional love, so they believed in a God who sent love to only the chosen ones. Hence, the lost ones developed rituals and tests to make them good enough to receive love from the separate God high above them in a separate world. The lost ones had no idea that their God was their own self in its original, formless state of multidimensional light and unconditional love. The formless Arcturians realized that they had to assist the lost ones before they created even more judgment, fear, and separation. Thus, the formless Arcturians realized that they had to transmute every molecule of matter back into light. For this reason, they created the Arcturian corridor. Channeled by Suzanne Lee. SuzanneLeePhD.blogspot.com